big story remains this morning, that hearing that we had on Capitol Hill yesterday regarding all of the trading in GameStop and other names. We see here Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev, there's Gabe Plotkin of Melvin Capital, Ken Griffin, Citadel, and here, of course, the star of the show, Keith Gill, Roaring Kitty. And he really stole the show right off the top. Let's take a listen to Gill's introduction of himself.
A few things I am not. I am not a cat. I am not an institutional investor, nor am I a hedge fund. I do not have clients, and I do not provide personalized investment advice for fees or commissions. I'm just an individual whose investment in GameStop and posts on social media were based upon my own research and analysis.
And I think, look, Keith Gill has kind of been the hero of this story all the way from the beginning. And who doesn't win the hearts and minds of the public when they begin their testimony before members of the House of Representatives by specifying that they are not a cat? Julie, Brian, I know that we all watched probably a little bit too much of this for our liking yesterday. Julie, let's start, I guess, talking a little bit about Gill. I know we're going to get into some of the stuff that Vlad Tenev said, and we're going to talk to a representative later who asked some questions of Ken Griffin. But just thinking about Roaring Kitty's role in this whole thing, I thought that he made very clear what he sees himself as and what avatar he thinks he serves for the Robinhood community, which is a pre-informed individual investor who wants to make one big bet for themselves and isn't all that worried about all this conspiracy nonsense that kind of started the hearing in the first place.
Well, and started the hearing in the first place, but that really didn't get that many questions when all was said and done, right? The whole conspiracy collusion angle of all of it didn't get a lot of air from the members of Congress. They reserved most of their questions for Vlad Tenev of Robinhood, although most of them didn't say Vlad Tenev. They pronounced it many different flavors and varieties over the course of that many hours long hearing. But they did focus most of their questioning on him. But again, it wasn't very targeted in terms of topic. But some of the interesting sort of lines of questioning that came out of it had to do with things like trading on margin and had to do with how retail investors on the Robinhood platform actually perform. And even if we didn't get the full scope of the answers to those questions in the hearing, it seems like that perhaps at some point we'll hear again from Tenev or when he eventually replies. You know, you always hear about these promises to follow up on questions in these hearings, and I don't always hear what the actual follow-up answers are, but that frequently happens where a person being questioned will say, I'll get you that answer, Congressman. So we'll see what ends up happening here. And do we want to let's listen actually to what Vlad had to say about the question of trading on margin.
To clarify your point on the $1,000 margin, that's actually something that we refer to as Robinhood Instant, and it's provided as a courtesy. When a customer initiates a deposit, we allow them access to up to $1,000 of that deposit immediately. Similar to how if you deposit a check at a bank, as a courtesy, they might provide access to those funds or a portion of them before that check clears. As for margin specifically, borrowing money on margin, the rules are very ironclad industry-wide. Obviously, Robinhood Securities conforms to all of the applicable rules. And Robinhood's product is in many ways more restrictive than that of our competitors because in order to even qualify for borrowing on margin, you have to be a Robinhood Gold customer, which involves paying $5 a month for the service.
Yep, you have to pay $5 a month to be a Robinhood Gold customer. I mean, presumably there are other things that they do, credit checks and whatnot, in order to allow you to trade on margin. But, you know, guys, this speaks to the whole gamification allegation against Robinhood, right? Does something inherent to the Robinhood platform versus the many other online brokerages out there, does it encourage risk-taking in a way that the others don't? Sozzi, I know, you know, this is something, as I know that this speaks to your sort of fundamental trading background here when we talk about these issues like this. But, you know, I don't know that I mean, personally, I don't know that Robinhood does more than the others, but who knows? It's a good question.
And who does know Julian Myles? But my analysis off of this was very simple. And I have a couple bullet points. First up, you get the sense that Robinhood is not prepared for another black swan event. That's what they used the term. Tenev used the term black swan yesterday, and you get the sense that they might have to raise more capital, and then raise more capital and more capital after that to cushion themselves ahead of a world that is only going to get even faster in terms of trading. And then last but not least, I do think, you watch Tenev up there, and I think this is a bullish event for the likes of Schwab and interactive brokers, more established trading platforms for their retail customers. I wouldn't be surprised if those two platforms gain some Robinhood customers off of this event here. I think you would want to maybe go with a more established name if you're a retail trader, that you just feel better about giving them your money, and then you'll get it back.
Yeah, and I know that there was a graphic from the New York Times this morning. Tenev got like 120 some odd questions, and I think the most next questioned witness was Ken Griffin, who got somewhere in the ballpark of 30 or 40 questions, and then it was down from there. Steve Huffman of Reddit, I was kind of wondering what he's doing there, but he said a couple interesting things, but he only got a handful of questions. I mean, this was really a hearing about Robinhood, and I think so many lawmakers had stories about family members or constituents who had gotten involved with the markets using their app. But Sozzi, I will say to that question of, does a Schwab gain, does a TD Ameritrade gain as a result of this? I just still don't think that most investors that are now in the markets for the first time because of Robinhood really even know that those companies exist, right? I mean, the whole thing with Robinhood, and I think it still is their advantage, and I would actually say after this testimony, the case for them going public and growing and being an ever larger company is probably strengthened. I mean, yeah, I don't think there were a couple timeline questions where Tenev kind of messed himself up, and there was one exchange kind of towards the end where they kept going back to that timeline of the day they had to post the capital, and he was sort of said something he maybe shouldn't have said in terms of whether they could have gotten the capital, what would have happened had they not gotten the capital, and he cleaned it up in a later response. But I do think overall the brand remains as strong as it was before this incident. And I just think that maybe in the business press, in a space where, to us, Schwab and Ameritrade and all these other people, they're all household names. To the general public, most people don't care about stocks at all. They only now care about stocks because Robinhood has made it easy for them to care about stocks. And, to that point about the black swan event, there's a circularity here, right, where Robinhood itself creates the conditions for this kind of event. And those events may happen in the future, but in a weird roundabout way, that circularity, affirms how important they are, right, within the market.
Well, here's your deep thought for the weekend, Myles, and I definitely want you to think on this here. Does this situation just strengthen the 13 million people on the platform? Does it just strengthen their resolve and why they love Robinhood? Perhaps, but does it attract more new users to Robinhood to the point where they can grow their already inflated valuation and eventually go public? To be determined.
Or none of them care. They didn't watch the hearing, and they're just going to stay on Robinhood.
Well, that too, Julie.
Anyway.
Well, that too.
Well, and I will say on that point too, and the official feed on YouTube that I watched didn't have comments, but a lot of other media organizations, including ours, were streaming it. They all had comments. Anytime Keith Gill spoke, everyone went nuts with approval. Everyone loves Keith Gill, and so I think to your point, Julie, people watched and they did the thing that always happens. They said, I can't believe that these are our representatives, blah, 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 blah. But then they waited for their hero, Mr. Roaring Kitty. He came on and they're like, this is my guy. And at one point, he digressed into this big fundamental take on GameStop's business. Again, that's his bit. And a lawmaker cut him off. They're like, all right, I got it. I don't really care if GameStop is a good business or not, but he's so passionate about it. And I do think people connect with that.